In Conversation with Terry Shepard, award-winning broadcaster, narrator, and author. A deep dive into the writer's craft with the artists and support systems who create the stories we love.
Thanks, Lisa. Anastasia Zadeik is a writer, editor, and narrative nonfiction performer. She lives in San Diego, California, where she serves as Director of Communications for the San Diego Writers Festival, as a mentor for the literary nonprofit So Say We All, and as a board member for the International Memoir Writers Association. Her first novel, Blurred Fates, won the 2023 Sarton Award and the 2023 National Indie Excellence Award in Contemporary Fiction. Her latest is The Other Side of Nothing, a powerful look at the impact of mental health issues in families. You can find her online at ANASTASIAZADEIK.com. Anastasia, welcome to the conversation. Give us the 411 on The Other Side of Nothing.
So thank you for having me, Terry. The Other Side of Nothing came out of some personal experiences. It is not my story, but it did come out of some personal experiences. My nephew, about 12 years ago, tried to take his own life. And I was out of town. I was actually out of the country at the time. And my sister sent me a text that just said, "When are you coming home?" And I didn't think anything of it. I just texted back in a week. But when I got home, I realized, she called me and I realized that she'd been going through all of this alone. And I said, "Why didn't you call me?" And she said, "Because I didn't want to ruin your trip. I knew you would come home," which I would have. But that's the kind of person my sister is. And so one of the things that was really distressing to me was that she's a very giving person, and she's the kind of person who brings the casserole over. And she said that people didn't know what to say to her after this happened. So they said nothing. She saw someone avoiding her at the grocery store because they didn't know what to say. And it just made her feel more alone with all of it. My nephew is doing well now, but her way of coping was to give back to her community, and she became involved in suicide prevention groups. And my way of coping with what was happening was to start thinking about writing a book about how mental health struggles impact not just the person who has those struggles, but their family members and the people who love them. And I wanted to try to come at it from multiple perspectives. I wanted to show what it feels like to be that person struggling, but also what it looks like from the other side, and to try to provide a way to give empathy to both sides and maybe a window for the people who are struggling to see what it's like for their family, and for the families to see what it's like for the people who are struggling. So that was my initial goal. And then over the course of writing it, my daughter started to have some struggles with depression, and I started struggling with depression. I've always had it my whole life, but I was always able to manage it with exercise and journal writing. And suddenly that just stopped working. And I found myself on both sides of the equation. And so it dovetailed right into the writing of this book. My daughter and I actually took the journey that the two young characters take from New York to Yosemite in 4 days as research, and it gave us this incredible time to talk. It grew out of my personal experiences, and that gives it a different importance level in my life. For me, success of this book is just getting it out there and hopefully having a couple of people read it and have it impact them in a positive way. My daughter read an early draft, and she'd been resistant to taking medication, going to therapy. She thought, it's not that bad, I can handle it myself. And after reading the book, she said, I realized I need help. And she went to a doctor and she started seeing a therapist. And I turned to my husband after I had the conversation with him, and I said, that's enough. If that's all that happens with this book, that's enough. And now, of course, I hope that might be something that happens for someone else out there, that they either see themselves or they see their child or they see their sister or their best friend, and they realize what they're going through, and it gives them some empathy.
The Other Side of Nothing read to me like a buddy movie.
Isn't that interesting? It is a buddy movie. It is a buddy movie. And I guess I should have said with the 411 was that it's a story of a young woman who has been struggling with grief and depression after the untimely death of her father. that she feels responsible for in some way. And as she slips further and further, she and her mom grow further and further apart because her mother was raised, pull yourself up by your bootstraps family. And she doesn't understand what's happening to her daughter at all. And even though she sees it happening, she just doesn't know what to do about it until her daughter tries to take her own life. And then this is a huge wake-up call to the mom. Obviously, the girl voluntarily goes into a residential facility where she meets and falls in love with another patient. And the two of them decide that they're going to leave against medical advice, and they're going to drive cross-country in pursuit of their wildest dreams. For him, that's recreating this iconic Ansel Adams image of Half Dome. And for her, it's crossing items off of something that she's called a second chance bucket list that she created while her dad was dying. And originally she had this deal where if her dad survived, she would pursue doing all these things, give them all a second chance. She's starting to feel better. She's taking medication. She's been in therapy, and she realizes she wants to give this a try. And so the idea is that they're going to cross these items off as they travel cross country. The two moms, when they find out that their kids have disappeared and they leave everything behind, they decide that they can't just sit still and wait, and no one, because they're young adults and over 18, authorities won't do anything. That they're basically told, we can't chase every young couple that decides to do something like this across the country. But the parents know the risk, the moms know the risk. And so they decide that they're going to try to find them based on just a handful of clues. And so it's basically two cross-country journeys. It's the cross-country journey with the young couple, and it's the cross-country journey with the two moms, who at the beginning of the book are very different, but they begin to learn that they aren't as different as they thought as the book moves along.
Anastasia Zadeik is our guest. Her book is The Other Side of Nothing. Writing anything about mental health issues is a very thin tightrope to walk. How did you find your center?
The one thing that gave me some comfort and a little bit of leeway is I know that mental health struggles look different for every single person. And I can only tell the story of one family or two families. I'm not going to encompass everyone's experience. There will be people who read the book and think, that's not how it happened for me. And that's right. Our brains are all different. That's what makes us so unique. But if you think about mental illness as something that's happening in the brain, which I believe it is, I'm worked in neuropsychology for a long time, and I believe that it is chemical. Because our brains are all different, our experience of mental health and mental illness will be, of course, different. What works for one person isn't going to necessarily work for someone else. And we all bring to it our intergenerational struggles, our daily struggles, our philosophies. And so all of those things operate on one individual. So I knew going in, I wasn't going to be able to cover everything. I wasn't trying. I was basically decided I'm going to write the story of this one young woman, one young man, and their mothers. And I wasn't going to try to make it everybody's story. You can't. So that's where I came out. I really did a lot of research on all of the conditions that I portray in the book. I have a stepdaughter whose mother had bipolar disorder, so I knew how she felt with that growing up. I knew how depression felt myself. I knew how other people had experienced it in my family. I knew how my sister felt as the mother of someone who had attempted suicide. So I had a lot of sources, both personal, and then obviously I did lots of research and read all kinds of books on personal experiences, memoirs of people with these struggles. That's how I prepared, and we'll see. The jury's out. But I'm sure that there's going to be some people who say, yeah, this feels real, and there's going to be other people who are going to say that's not my experience. And it's true. It won't be.
What was the first feedback from your beta readers when they saw your manuscript?
My beta readers it was interesting because one of my beta readers wanted me to go into more of the sort of objective view of what the symptoms are of bipolar disorder, what the symptoms are of depression, what happens what a doctor would say when someone's taking an SSRI, which is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, for those who don't know what an SSRI is. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to show you what it was like, not tell you. So there's little hints. The young woman, Julia, is taking an SSRI, and she has the side effect of being thirsty all the time. But I don't say she's thirsty all the time. I just show her getting ice chips. I show her drinking lots of liquids. The young man who struggles with bipolar disorder is anti-medicine. So he starts to experience some of the symptoms, but I don't say that he's experiencing the symptoms. I show you talking. He's talking faster. He's not eating. He doesn't need to sleep. His mood starts to become more volatile. He shows signs of agitation physically. So I don't say that he's doing those things. I don't say this is what will happen if you don't take your medication and move back into a manic phase. I just show you what it's like. And you will hear from the other characters what they're seeing, but it is not from the standpoint of being like at 30,000 feet looking at someone and describing their symptoms. So that was one of the comments from beta readers, is they wanted it to be more like that. And I was like, that's not my intention. So my beta readers were also often said that it was a powerful read and one that they had to take in. They wanted to read it quickly, but they also wanted to take it slowly because they wanted to absorb everything, but they were compelled to keep reading. And so some of them said that they went back and reread sections, and that there are clues throughout the book as to what inevitably happens, but they didn't see them necessarily the first time as clues. And they reread sections to go, oh gosh, it was there all the time. So that's some other comments that I got from beta readers. And I did do some rewrites after the first round of beta readers. I went to a developmental editor. I worked with someone who sent me back 5 pages, single spaced, when I thought it was done. And we've all been there. By the way, if this happens to any writers out there, the advice I've gotten, which was absolutely spot on, is give yourself 24 hours before you do anything, because your emotions, you have to give yourself time to settle down and then read it more carefully and more objectively. Because I think we all have this tendency to go, okay, I'm going to dive in and I'm going to point out all the things that are wrong about this critique, because she didn't get it. And if you just let yourself take some time, you'll find that most of the time, I took the advice, almost all of the advice from my developmental editor. It strengthened my character arcs. It explained some of the things that were a little too vague, and it was incredibly helpful. And then I went through another round of beta readers. I had 3 more people read it, 1 that had already read it and 2 that were new. My reason being that I always try to have 3 or more beta readers at each stage, because I was given the advice early on that an individual reader brings everything with them when they read a book. They bring their own past experiences. They bring their present experiences. They bring their thoughts and their opinions about things to their book. So you're going to find that an individual reader may not like a section, or they may not agree with the way that you've developed a character. You don't need to listen to every single critique. But if 3 people tell you that something is off, or you may want to rethink that, then you should. Because now you're getting a consensus, and you don't necessarily have to listen to their fix, but you should at least go in and look at what they're saying and try to figure out why it's not working for that many people. So that's why I always try to have at least 3 beta readers. But I went through a second round of beta readers, re-edited it, and then went on with the publishing process.
The beta reader concept fascinates me because we all come to a book with our own experiences and sensibilities. How did you select your betas?
2 of my beta readers in the earliest drafts were my 2 children. And they're adults. My son is 30, my daughter's 32 now. They were in their late 20s. My son was about the age of the male character when he read the first draft. My daughter was, obviously she's 2 years older, so she was a little bit older. she has struggled with depression and has had thoughts of suicide. She actually took Lexapro, which is one of the SSRIs that has a black box label, and it made things worse, which happens to the character in the book. And initially, my son is a history major and he loves philosophy. He's read every philosopher out there. And so he was my beta reader for the young man from the standpoint of how does someone that age consume and think about philosophical thought, and how do they express it, and how do they talk? And my daughter was my source for how would a young woman respond to that, and how would a young woman talk? How would she see the world? And I wanted those to be accurate portrayals, because I am a 60-year-old woman. I cannot remember what it was like to be 18 or in my 20s. I wish I could. And I have this idea of what it was like, but it's not probably accurate. So those were two of my early beta readers. My sister was a beta reader in the second round, mostly because I wanted to hear from somebody about the experience of being a mother of someone who is struggling, and other than myself, or other than myself.
And this is what happens when we write. We start correcting and editing ourselves when we talk, don't we?
I am one of those people who has the mug that says, I'm silently correcting your grammar. Very bad. I have my copy editing certificate, but let me tell you, you can't copy edit your own book. Anyway, so my sister was one of my second round beta readers. And then I had a friend whose daughter was about the age of the main character read the first round. And then I had two other people read the second round. And my daughter read the second round again. So she was my second, she read both versions and helped me determine whether the things that my developmental editor had suggested had been done.
We're in conversation with Anastasia Zadeik, discussing The Other Side of Nothing, a powerful look at the impact of mental health issues in families. Was the process of creating this story therapeutic for you?
It was therapeutic. It was also really hard. And in the author note at the end, I talk a little bit about the fact that writing about depression and disconnection and the feeling of wondering what the answer to the simplest and most difficult question there is in the world, why are you here, can put you into a headspace that can be a little overwhelming. And the first few times I read The Myth of Sisyphus, I read it 3 times. The first time I didn't get hardly any of it. My brain was whirring. And the second time I started highlighting it, which actually became a plot thing in the book. And the third time I actually thought, I get this. This makes sense to me. So I went through my own evolution of how I would answer that question, why are you here? And so in that sense, it was very therapeutic. I came out at the end of the book feeling more confident about why I'm here, what my purpose is, and what I am taking away from every day. There's a Camus quote that I have in the book that talks about life as a succession of presents. And I like both meanings of the word present in that quote. You can look at it as a succession of gifts. Every day, every moment is a gift. You can also look at it as present in the sense of past, present, future. And the only thing that we can really control is the present. The past has already happened. The future is still to come. Our lives are a succession of present moments. And if we can live each present moment to the best of our ability and appreciate everything around us, then we've lived a life that's worth living. That's my theory. And that's what came out by the end of the book for me as a writer.
The book is The Other Side of Nothing, a powerful look at the impact of mental health issues in families. And our guest has been its author, Anastasia Zadeik. You can find her online at anastasiazadeik.com. I'll spell that for you. ANASTASIAZADEIK.com. The Other Side of Nothing is available wherever cool books are sold. Anastasia, thank you so much for a truly enlightening conversation.
Oh, thank you, Terry. This has been great.
In Conversation with Terry Shepard is a copyrighted presentation. All rights reserved. I'm Lisa Davis. Join Terry Shepard next time in Conversation.